meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everybody. We are here at Color of Fandom VirtualCon 2026. You're welcome in the panel, Religious Representation and Fandom. So I'm going to turn it over to you all to introduce yourselves.
Okay. My name is John LaPointe. I've been a proud member of Color of Fandom since 2012 when I attended the first VCon, and I got involved in the group and decided I wanted to help organize these.
And I'm Justin LaPointe, his father.
Yeah, okay. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by my dad, my aunt, Beth Priester, and of course, Deborah, Brian, and Lee Wynn. I'm going to let people introduce themselves in a minute. Some housekeeping things. We will be talking about three categories: science fiction, horror and apocalyptic, and fantasy. And then hopefully there'll be time at the end for people in Discord to ask questions or share their favorite examples of religious representation in fandom. This panel will contain spoilers. I'm going to spoil the heck out of some things, so you've been warned. Nothing recent. I did want to make one request. If you want to poke fun at fictional religions like the Cthulhu mythos, go right ahead. But I would request that everyone be respect. We have people of various faiths in the audience, so the people keep it respectful about all real-world religions. I will let my panelists introduce themselves. Just tell me who you are. And if you're comfortable sharing what your religious background and experience is, I'll start with my dad, Justin.
I'm Justin LaPointe. I'm an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister with an emphasis on the Universalist. And that's, I am a fan.
And he taught religion on the college level.
Oh, yeah. I taught religion on community college level.
And was made minister emeritus at Outlaws Bridge Universalist Church. Okay, this is my my aunt, Beth Priester. Would you like to introduce yourself, Aunt Beth?
Well, my name's Beth. I am a Christian. I used to title myself evangelical, but that word doesn't work anymore. I'll just say that I love Jesus, and let's leave it at that. And I kind of like fantasy, but I get really confused by it all. And it's been a lot of fun talking to Justin and John about it over the years.
Okay, Deborah, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Deborah. I am an admin in Color of Fandom. I've been here for at least 11 years or so. And now my faith has evolved into calling myself sort of a progressive, decolonized Christian. Not anything in the Western, Christianity. Just direct before it came over here and became what it was. So it's more open to everybody, welcoming everybody, just like, Jesus' actual teachings of loving and caring and taking care of all people.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Brian and Lee Wynn, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes. Hi, my name is Brian, and I have been a member of Color of Fandom for about 10 years. I've found out about the Color of Fandom group through Deborah. My faith in religion is a Christian. However, my faith in Christianity has changed through the years. I look at Christianity more towards like the universe instead of like the strict organized religion.
And Lee, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, she's
rehydrating.
That's cool. Keep hydrated, Lee.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lee. I'm married to a guy here, and I found out through Color Fandom basically through Deborah and him, and been active member, I guess, as long as you have. I grew up Southern Baptist. I was probably in my early 20s. I started questioning my faith. My mom had left the Southern Baptist Church and had gone to many churches, but ended up in First Pres downtown. And over the years, my religion has changed too, where I'm open to because when I grew up, it was very conservative. It was just just very conservative. Now I've changed my outlook where people are welcome. That it's not just like Brian says, more of a universal thing. Like we're all under God as one, not just because you're this denomination, I'm that denomination. So.
Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to start with science fiction. Obviously, you can't talk about religion and science fiction without talking about the conception of the Force in Star Wars. So I'm going to hand it over to my dad to talk some about the Force here.
Okay.
More about the Force in Star Wars.
All right. Many years ago, when this fellow was a small boy, and we lived in Massachusetts, I organized a theology conference. And what I did is to research into all the statements of faith of my denomination over the years, and to educate folks, and then tried to get them to talk about how we could express our faith in modern terms. Well, it it went over like a lead balloon. Folks were pretty much, well, we're all together and we're all happy, and that's it. And I was discouraged. Now, I had invited the president of our denomination, whose name was Paul Carnes, to our event. And he arrived late, but he was in time for the banquet at night. And I told him how discouraged I was about the lack of interest in serious religious discussion among the people. And he said, Justin, you must see this new movie. It's called Star Wars. And it has a concept in it of the Force, which is a power that unites the universe. There's a light side and a dark side. And he said, all the kids are watching it. And so as soon as I could, I took my wife and John to see Star Wars at an outdoor theater. They had them back then. And so that's my, I feel that the Force, I like the Force because the Force combines both Western religious thought and Eastern religious thought. And so that's my experience with Star Wars.
I agree. I like that it combines East and West. There's the whole yin and yang thing, which is not totally dissimilar from the Force. And the idea that not only is there a light side and a dark side, but you can go back and forth. I'm going to spoil, like I said, spoilers. At the end of Return of the Jedi, Luke is essentially able to save his father, Anakin Skywalker's become Darth Vader's soul, and turn him to the light side. And then if you look at the last movie in the prequels, and also partly in Attack of the Clones, but primarily in Revenge of the Sith, you see Anakin going from the light side to the dark side. And then recently, Dad and I were rewatching Last Jedi, and Kylo Ren, goes from the dark side to the light side, back to the dark side again in one film. He's dark side, then Rey gets him to the light side and he kills Snoke, and then he goes back to the dark side and tries to destroy the Resistance. But the idea that you can go back and forth between light and dark, and also the concept of the Force as something you come from and return to. Now, we can't discuss the Force without bringing up one of most people, Star Wars fans' least favorite things, midichlorians. This is where George Lucas decided, for some reason, he did all kinds of things in the prequels. We have no idea what he was thinking when he did them. It was to take the Force, a very spiritual, religious concept, and turn it into pseudoscience. And midichlorians were these things where you had microorganisms in your blood, and how well a Jedi could use his powers or their powers depended on how many midichlorians were in their blood supply. And I've talked to a lot of people about this subject, and no one I have met has liked the concept of midichlorians, because I met one guy in our church who's atheist and hates religion and spirituality, and he liked them because it made it pseudoscientific rather than religious. But most people were so thrilled when the sequels came out that they did away with midichlorians and returned to a religious concept of the Force. And we were watching Last Jedi, and Luke asked Rey about the Force, and she said, well, it's what powers the Jedi. And he goes, no, everything in that statement is wrong, and he explains the religious aspect of the Force. Does anyone else want to talk about Star Wars? If not, I'm going to let Lee and Brian wanted to talk some about Star Trek Deep Space Nine under science fiction. Let me see. I assume you're going to talk some about the Bajoran faith.
Yes, the Bajoran faith. When I saw Star Trek Deep Space Nine, it was different than the other Star Trek shows. And they had the Bajorans. Their faith. I'm trying to remember how they have the faith in these.
Was it the Founders?
Yes, the Founders. Yes. Yeah, the Founders, and then there were also it was also a war with the Cardassians, and they believed in their faith, in what they what they believed in.
Mm-hmm. And I remember Gul Dukat, who's the evil Cardassian, hated the Bajorans because of their faith and was persecuting them. And I think any religious group who's ever been persecuted can relate to that.
Yes.
And did you want to say anything, or anyone else want to say anything else about Deep Space Nine and the Bajoran faith? Of course, you had the Louise Fletcher character was a leader in the Bajoran church, but it shows that not, my dad could definitely attest to the fact not everyone who's a religious leader is a good person.
Yes.
But also that Commander Sisko had been through the wormhole, and I think the Bajoran people viewed him as semi-divine because of it.
Right.
Did anyone else want to say anything more about Deep Space Nine?
Well, I was going to bring up the other part was on the space station had the promenade,
Mm-hmm.
where that was kind of like a Las Vegas kind of symphony,
Mm-hmm.
where all the games and everything. So
yeah,
and then got the Bajoran faith. Yeah, so you had a different combinations of
right.
What in today's world is.
Okay, so like in religion, the more like conservative, they had religion, but then they also had, we're going to go and do these sinful things. But people kind of looked at them like, why are you practicing this? But when you say this, is that the same?
Yeah, something.
Okay.
All right. Well, keeping on the theory of Star Trek, we were talking about bad Star Trek movies at the party last night, and probably the worst is Star Trek V. And I won't talk much about it because it's a terrible, terrible film. But in it, In it, oh, it's so bad. In it, the crew of the Enterprise go to meet. Well, they meet Spock's brother, and he hijacks the Enterprise to go meet God. Spoiler alert: it's not really God, but that's a terrible movie, and we won't talk. Well, you knew since Deborah and I were on the panel, we're going to talk about horror and apocalyptic, and we'll start when whoever wrote up the description for the program book mentioned exorcisms, and I figured we should talk about that, even though I didn't initially plan to. And of course, the gold standard in exorcism films is The Exorcist. We won't do a deep dive into it today because we're going to do a deep dive into it tomorrow. But the plot is there's this little girl, Reagan, who gets possessed, and her mother initially tries to get a medical opinion. She takes her to doctors and mental health professionals, and no one can help this poor little girl. So she goes to a priest and asks for an exorcism. And the priest explains to her that this isn't the Middle Ages. You need to get medical care and mental health care for your daughter. And eventually another priest, played by Max von Sydow, shows up and they do perform an exorcism. I'm not going to spoil the ending of The Exorcist because it's just too good. But what I liked about The Exorcist, and this is true in a lot of the things we're going to discuss today, is ordinary people fighting evil and winning. And the two heroes of this movie and the book, which I haven't read, are priests. But moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the Dunwich Horror. This is a story written, or at least published in 1929 by H.P. Lovecraft. I think it was in Weird Tales. I'm not sure. I didn't do that much research. But Lovecraft, on the topic of religion, created his own pantheon of evil gods, all with unpronounceable names. And I think he got that from Lord Dunsany. But the Dunwich Horror deals with a concept you find in a lot of pagan religions, and in its own form in Christianity, of a god having a child or children with mortal women, and the creature becomes the offspring becomes a demigod. And I think he got this partly from The Great God Pan by Arthur Mencken, the Irish author. And I believe The Great God Pan was one of Stephen King's favorite stories. But there's this deity called Yog Sothoth. That was the one we encountered in Dana's game on Thursday, if you were playing. And Yog Sothoth impregnates a mortal woman named Lavinia Whately, I believe is her name. But she has two offspring. One is a horrible, monstrous thing that looks like the father, which is the Dunwich Horror. The other is a Wilbur Whately, who looks human enough. But what happens is he tries to break into Miskatonic University Library and steal the Necronomicon. And he gets killed by the trusty guard dog. And when they do an autopsy, they discover he's a horrible monster thing, too. But there are two films. I like both of these movies. Now, some people would disagree and didn't like the first one. Two film versions of this in 1970 and 2009. They both star Dean Stockwell. And what I loved about the Dunwich Horror, the story, is, again, normal people. The thing that defeats the Hell God isn't, a vampire slayer with supernatural powers. The heroes in this story are a librarian and two college professors. And normally in Lovecraft and Cosmic Horror, the good guys don't win. The good guys rarely survive intact. But in this story, the good guys win, and they defeat the big bad at the end of the story. And I'm spoiling, I told you I would. So I love that theme. And now the first film, Dean Stockwell plays Wilbur Whately. It stars Sandra Dee. Ed Begley plays Professor Armitage. They don't have the other two professors in it, but they did in the newer version. And they have Sam Jaffe as Noah Whately, and that's probably the worst casting in movie history. Because Noah Whately is supposed to be a terrifying warlock, and instead Sam Jaffe plays him like a clown. It's like Jar Jar Binks as a warlock. Yeah. anyway, that
maybe someone else would like
yeah.
to comment.
But anyway, so Sandra Dee's in that one as too, and I like it when they add female characters to a Lovecraft story, because in Lovecraft stories, main characters in female characters are like positive characters of color. They're few and pretty much non-existent. All the women in Lovecraft stories are not good. So I like that they added Sandra Dee. Now, in the newer film, Dean Stockwell plays Professor Armitage, and they have the two professors. Jeffrey Combs plays Whately, and if you've ever seen a Lovecraft adaptation, it probably involved Combs. But they have the two professors. They make one of the professors a woman, which I really liked, because even if Muscatonic was real, which it wasn't, in the 20s it probably would have had female faculty, definitely, if it was contemporary times. The character I wanted to focus on was the male professor who teaches a course in the Cthulhu mythos. He doesn't believe in anything religious or spiritual. He's lost his faith. But yet, facing the Dunwich Horror, he is able to regain his faith. And I thought that was a neat touch. Now, I don't know if anyone else has read the Dunwich Horror, seen either of the movies, and would like to comment. If not, I'll move on to an author who was inspired by Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, Stephen King, one of our favorites, and his story, The Stand. It was written in the original, I forget when the new release came out. It was written in 1978, and in 1994, he wrote a teleplay for TV version of The Stand. And what happens in The Stand is there's this horrible plague. It's kind of like COVID, only worse, and it kills most of humanity. And all the characters who survive are drawn either to the light side or the dark side, like in The Force. The good guys dream of Mother Abigail, and they go to seek her out. The bad guys dream of Randall Flagg and go to him. And he's like some sort of devil or avatar of Satan, or getting back to Lovecraft, Glenn Bateman calls him Nyarlathotep. But it has like good and dark, like Harold Lauder starts light side and goes dark. But one of the characters is Nick Andros, who's a deaf mute. He is and he has a friend named Tom Cullen, who was what we call intellectually disabled now. And so it's good disability representation for King. Anyway, Nick will write notes since he can't talk. And Tom can't read them, unfortunately. But Mother Abigail, that he's one of the first to meet up with her. At least this is how it happens in the miniseries. I'm trying to remember the book. She talks about having dreams, hearing the voice of God, being guided by God, having Nick, that God brought him to her. And he says, Nick writes a note that he doesn't believe in God, at least not at that point in the story. And she goes, that doesn't matter. He believes in you. And I thought that was a really nice touch King added to have God working through an atheist, a self-professed atheist. So I know a lot of us have probably read The Stand and seen at least one version of it. Did anyone else want to comment on the religious representation in The Stand? If not, obviously we have Deborah on the panel, and if she's going to do stuff, we're going to she obviously is going to do apocalyptic zombie stuff. So I want to let Deborah take it away and talk about religious representation in The Walking Dead and in The Last of Us.
We're actually going to add some more apocalyptic shows too.
You go.
Just to mention
I've been doing the talking, so you take it over.
Yeah. So yeah, one of my favorite subgenres is post-apocalyptic shows and movies, and all apocalypse and dystopian stuff.
Yeah.
But my main one is The Walking Dead. So, but in general, a lot of the post-apocalyptic stories, people at the beginning, you see people, holding on to their their religions of the pre-world, and then you have, because you meet different people, because a lot of the population has died off, they are either agnostic or atheist. So you have all these different groups of people in together, but you eventually find that everybody still needs something to believe in. So either people have crises of faith, or they form their own different types of religion or cults. With starting of the regular work, the world religions of today, in the whole Walking Dead universe, in the main show, we have characters like Herschel and Gabriel, which Herschel was a Baptist preacher, and Gabriel is a Episcopalian minister. And they both start out with very being real traditional in their faith, even as they see walkers, what they call zombies, in The Walking Dead. And they believe that, the people, Herschel especially, believes it's just a sickness and people can still be saved and they can be cured. Gabriel is a little different, because you find out that he was so in fear. He presents that, he's still holding on to faith, but he locked his congregation out of the church when the apocalypse started. And then so he is, throughout the whole series, going back and forth between holding strong on to his faith but being guilty. But he still, keeps, and where somebody asks him why is he still wearing his collar, his faith is still in Christianity, but it just evolved into what he believes into to survive in the world. We also have a character called Sadiq. He's Islamic, and there's some scenes where he does Muslim quotes from the Quran, and he holds on to that. Even though he is a doctor and he's a scientist, he holds on to what he grew up in. There, in Judaism, there's a character in A Spit Off Fear where he's a rabbi before the apocalypse, but you see him quickly lose his faith, and eventually turn into an atheist. Then you have people who turn to a type of Buddhism or a spiritual base with like Aikido, that adopt like a Zen or all life is precious type thing. But then you see those characters either be, especially like character Morgan, they're like, when they learn it, they're all in, but then something triggers and then they're all on the other side where they're killing. So holding on to traditional religion is a little iffy in the apocalypse. Also in the universe, there are a few made up religions that are prominent in cults, but one is called the Whisperers, where they have a cult-like philosophy where they have a person they call the Alpha. The Alpha gets killed, the Beta takes the Alpha position, and they feel like that they accept the walkers as the next step of evolution. So they wear their skin so they can walk with them. We also have the Reapers, where they were mercenaries and military mercenaries. So they stick together, but they believe in a God who blesses their survival any way they can do it, even if it's killing, trying to take over people's communities or anything like that. They think it's still the Pope, the leader. He calls himself the Pope, and he thinks he hears from God with whatever they do, good or bad. In the spinoff, Daryl Dixon, a lot of it is because it's based in France. One of the main characters, Isabella, she, after the apocalypse caused her turn to religion, and she is a Catholic nun in their abbey is called the Abbey of Saint Bernadette, and they have made a pseudo religion called the Union of Hope, which they still use Christian faith values for. And then you have there's a lot of factions on the Walking Dead Dead City because it's based in New York. So a lot of people who were left on the New York, the island, have different factions. One of the biggest ones is called the Barazzi, and they function kind of cult-like. The leader's called the Dama, and she manipulates people psychologically to worship her and whatever her plan is for a bigger world. And then there is a faction cult that's in Central Park called the Foragers. They're kind of like the Whisperers, and they believe with, being with the walkers, living off the land, but protecting, the area that they live in. Moving on, because I can talk about Walking Dead forever. The Last of Us, the main made up religion are the Seraphites. They're fighting the other factions. They don't really have like religion undertones. They kind of just believe the same thing. But the Seraphites, they follow a self-proclaimed prophet and her teachings become their scripture, and you see her teachings like written on the ruins of the cities that they're in. They reject all technology, and they use rituals like whistling for communication, but they also do live sacrifices, and they're really strict. Real quick, there's 3 more shows. And the show Raised by Wolves, which it was a good show. It was like 2-3 seasons, so it's It's a Warner Brothers show. They go full on sci-fi religion, and then they go to all the way back to an ancient religion and try to revive it to reshape the future. Into the Badlands, which is an old AMC show too. The focus a lot on martial arts. It's a fantasy post-apocalyptic world, so it's not like rooted in like what we know the world is now. But it's a mix of power, feudal power, and spiritual philosophy, and a supernatural ability called the gift that certain people have. And it's almost treated as like enlightenment because they use a lot of the Buddhism principles mixed in martial arts culture. And then lastly, there's Snowpiercer, which is also an AMC show where people end up on, whoever's left on the planet ends up on a train because they have this ice age. And the train itself, is kind of split in sections, classism, but some people almost worship the train and the train conductor as who they follow, and it kind of becomes their own belief system until the other people in the lower class rebel against it.
Thanks so much, Deborah. And I'm glad you mentioned Snowpiercer because I don't know what my stupid Discord's doing. Okay. But, frozen. Hold on. Okay. Are we frozen? My screen's acting up. Oh. Lou Wynn's doing something on her board.
Did somebody hit something by accident?
Louie, did you mean to put up your whiteboard? You're muted.
No, I did not. Sorry.
That's fine. As long as people can still hear us, we're all good. Thank you for mentioning Snowpiercer. I need to get back to watching that. And you mentioned fantasy. I want to transition over to that. Talk a little bit about J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Both of them are excellent examples of how ordinary people, whether it's hobbits or children, are able to go up against the forces of evil. And for this, I'd like to turn things over to my aunt, Beth Priester, to talk a little bit about Tolkien and C.S.
Oh my, you didn't know. Tell me I was going to be on stage. And it's been a long time since I read them. Can I pick my favorite, tell about my very favorite section?
Please.
C.S. Lewis, okay, I'm going to be honest and say I read his space trilogy, and I'm just not, like I said, I'm not great with fantasy, and it went right over my head. But the Chronicles of Narnia, I just love. And every time I read it, I find new things. And my very, very favorite part is the very last chapter of the last book when they finally, I'm forgetting the terminology. I would have had it out in front of me if well, they leave the Shadowlands and go to the real world, the real eternity. Anybody else read that far in the series?
I haven't read the book, but they had them on, this shows how old I am, LP records when I was a kid, and I checked them out of the library and listened to them on our stereo. So I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody knows the first book, the original Chronicles, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And it's wonderful too. And it has all kinds of symbolism in it, but it just kind of builds and builds until you get to the last book. And I just want to jump up and down when I read it. It's so glorious. So.
Thanks so much, Aunt Beth. And I'm sorry I didn't make it clear. I wanted you to talk about that. But Brian, Lee, would you guys like to talk some about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis?
Well, I'm not very familiar with Tolkien's work for C.S. Lewis, but there's one of the fantasy I like is the Dark Crystal, and it's about a crystal that was together at one time until a group it got cracked and it got into different fractions.
Yeah, it's if you're not familiar, it's a Jim Henson production from his Muppets. And so what happens is, I forget exactly what happens, but part of the crystal breaks and it divides the beings into two different beings. So you have what they call
you have the mystics,
the mystics and the majestics.
Yeah.
And so supposedly when the mystics there was only one mystic left, they thought. And the majestics don't like to mess. They don't like each other. And so what happens is each being is interconnected with the others. And so it's almost like this crystal shows up, it's like the whole, like the universe. And then the little mystic guy, he finds out from his master, because he's raised by the what are they called?
The mystics.
The mystics. He's raised by the mystics, and he ends up going on a quest it's his destiny to find the piece of the crystal to fix it. And so what happens is, and if you haven't seen it, again, John, sorry for all of you who haven't seen it, but for the spoiler, but you end up finding that the beings that are the bad side, like the dark side, and the ones that are more the light, are interconnected with each other. So as one of the dark side dies, one of the majestics dies. So it's really kind of that sort of like almost, it kind of reminded me a lot of the Star Wars, like kind of like the good and evil, but then they kind of end up working and helping each other. Because one of the majestics get bad side, he gets kicked out his allegiance and ends up helping, but still trying to help his people too. And then, at the end, they end up reuniting and becoming one being again. So, but it reminded me a lot of that the good and evil, like that we see, and how if we all kind of like work together, we may not be able to overcome the evil, but we can at least help it, make it better. That's kind of like what I took away from it.
Thank you so much. Deborah, would you like to weigh in about Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, or the Dark Crystal?
No, like Beth said, it's been a long time since I remember growing up, especially with like the cartoons, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. When I was going to like children's church, they show the cartoons all the time. So when the Chronicles of Narnia, when they remade it into live action, I was excited and I watched them too. But yeah, I haven't revisited them, and I have both the sets for the Space Trilogy and the Chronicles of Narnia. But it's been a while. But I do know, like that they, especially for them to be, marketed, it's like children's books or like people who were into, fantasy and stuff like that. It was the like allegories of Christianity in it. It was like, it was influential that it was, it was fantasy, and it talked about that, because a lot of times you hear, in religion, Christianity, that, all of that's from the devil and stuff like that. So it was, refreshing to have those types of genre fiction for Christianity.
Okay, Brian, you and Lee also want to talk about the film The Black Cauldron, which I haven't seen, so I'm eager to hear.
It's been a while. I started rewatching it, but we didn't get to finish it. It it's one of those things too where it's like, so you have this little boy, I forget his name right now, but he ends up finding he finds out that it's his destiny to again get rid of the Horn King. It's on Disney, by the way, if anybody has Disney Plus or Disney. And I don't want to spoil too much in case you want to watch because it's a really cute little Disney cartoon. But the pig ends up being so the pig knows where the destiny, how to destroy the Horn King. So again, it's kind of like that where you have the good versus the evil, and they're trying to like figure out how to get rid of the Horn King, who's very, but also at the same time, not do too much damage to stuff. I guess is the best way I can explain it. I mean, it's like I didn't get finished watching. You have anything to comment on it?
All I can say it's been a long time since I've seen it. We were watching part of it yesterday.
But it's one of those things where it's kind of like the pig is sort of like kind of worship because she has this power to know about the future and where things are. And she's very protective. They're very protective of her. And then she ends up getting lost. And then the Horn King's trying to find her. And everybody's trying to take away this pig who is the one thing that's going to save society in the movie, basically.
I just realized you're talking about the Prydain Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander.
Yeah, it's called The Black Cauldron. It's a Disney cartoon.
See, I don't watch movies. I read.
Oh, okay.
And it's 5 books in the series, the Prydain Chronicles, and they're absolutely wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even know there was a movie. So
yeah, there was. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this was back from when I was a little girl. I remember seeing it as a child.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and Justin and John read the books and watch the movies. I just read the books. So we all have different takes on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, everybody. We're running low on time, but if Brian and Lee, as long as you don't go down the J.K. Rowling rabbit hole, talk briefly about Harry Potter and the concepts of good and evil in the Harry Potter books and movies.
Yes, Harry Potter is almost similar to Star Wars, where where Anakin he becomes Darth Vader. Well, same similarity to Harry Potter, where the person became Lord Voldemort. They become evil. Of course, Harry lost his parents to Lord Voldemort, and he tries to learn stuff at Hogwarts, and then of course, his adopted family didn't really care much about him. So eventually, he went to Hogwarts and found out about Professor Dumbledore, and then found out about Lord Voldemort, or the one that is not talk about.
And it's kind of like with that series, he kind of, he was an outcast because of his cousin, and he kind of found his place, and then he was able to, through his experiences, kind of learn, okay, well, this is evil, but I can do good, if I do this. So, he's more of that, like, I've read both the books and seen the movies, so.
Yeah, same with me.
But again, that's kind of like the Star Wars thing, like you were saying earlier. You have the dark versus the good, and it's like, like for instance, like Snape. I think, he reminded me a lot of the character, like you were saying, Kylo Ren. He's like, okay, you find out later he's really good, but he comes off as being really bad.
Yeah.
So I think those kind of they match a little bit, but not they not really. They kind of have similar, I guess, takes.
Mm-hmm.
So. But yeah, I don't want to get too much. I know that could be a controversial issue with.
Well, I wanted to thank all our panelists for their contributions. This has been a good discussion. Um, I'd like, well, while I was dealing with Deborah and I were talking about apocalyptic horror and religion. Donna, are you there? Uh, uh, Let me see. What I was going to do is see if Donna wanted to discuss. Is Color Fandom watched the show Midnight Mass? If Donna wanted to talk about the religious representation there, is Donna in the Zoom, or is she only in the chat here? Shoot.
Looks like both.
All right.
And yeah, I mean, I've seen Midnight Mass. I thought everybody else had. I don't know how. I don't know about Kenya.
Well, like I said, if people who are in the Discord would like to chime in with questions or their favorite representations of religion and fandom.
I mean, it's not something I focused on when watching these movies. I like the idea of Jedi being. I guess George Lucas used Buddhism, Jedi philosophy of like detachment and temptation, and not being just being detached from those.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Midnight Mass just. I mean, it just covered. I guess kind of like flipping religion on its head, or having blind worship or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the original vampire that turned everybody. I never understood how they thought.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I like about Midnight Mass was they dealt with the conflict between the Muslim sheriff and the church lady who was an Islamophobe. I thought that was an interesting touch they put into the show. Donna, Kenya, do the other of you guys want to mention religious fandoms that you like, or ask a question, or? I'm not hearing any. I'm not hearing Kenya or Donna. So. Okay, hi, Donna.
Okay. Okay. So is somebody? Uh-oh.
That's John. John, mute because you're in Discord. You need to mute in Discord.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, were people trying to ask questions? That's what I wanted to check.
Yeah, John was going to ask if you had any comments about the religious aspects in Midnight Mass or any other shows you've seen.
I thought I was going to have more comments, but I don't.
Oh.
I can hear you.
I can hear you, Kenya.
Oh. be a religion so that people would continue to be.
Thank you very much, Kenya. Well, we've got 2 minutes left. Did anyone else on the panel want to jump in with any final thoughts? Dad, did you want to say anything else? Or?
No, it's just that Star Wars is something that has united generations. Back in 19, I think we saw it in 1978, and we've been looking forward to each new Star Wars, and it is something that that people of different generations can share.
Yep. And there's a new one coming out this year. They normally come out at Christmas, so since my birthday's 3 days after Christmas, we typically go out and see whatever Star Wars movie is new that year. Beth, Deborah, Lee, Brian, anybody? Final thoughts? We've got a minute.
Well,
Go for it, Ryan. Go for it.
I think I don't know if the sequel trilogy was released in December, but like all the other ones, actually the sequel trilogy and Rogue One were released in December, but they usually released in May, and that's been the thing ever since the first movie in 1977.
Well, if no one else has anything to say, I'd like to thank all my panelists for your wonderful contributions. I think we had a good discussion here.
Yes, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Problem. No problem.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, my pleasure. I've been wanting to do this for 2 or 3 years now. I'm glad it finally got approval. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Dad.
I was just going to say thank you. I'm going to hit the record. I'm going to stop the record button now.